and Pies. Okay, there's Uhuru Foods and Pies at their table over here. Make sure that we all clean up after ourselves, so that pie belongs in our mouths, not on the floor. We want to respect this wonderful space that we have this evening. Please turn off or silent your cell phones. No photos or videos unless you're approved by our AV team. We are live streaming right now. And so if you go on your phone to facebook.com/USM St. Pete, you can share the live stream with any of your friends who are not able to make it here this evening, whether they're homesick or out of town. You can share it with them. And if you are on Wi-Fi, please get off the Wi-Fi so our AV team has an easier time. We want to have a clear live stream for everyone who was not able to be here in person. And so this is the fourth stop on the Days of Reparations to African People National Speaking Tour. And it just went to Philadelphia in the beautiful historic Uhuru furniture store there that just celebrated its 30th anniversary, a huge victory. And then to Louisville, Kentucky, and to the beautiful Uhuru House Community Center in St. Louis, Missouri. And now it is here in St. Petersburg, Florida, incredibly historic. This is where the first reparations political candidate is running. Uhuru. And that is Eritha Akilé Cainion, who you will hear speak tonight. And she has a table over here for her campaign. So you definitely want to check out that table when you have a second. This is a long-time city of African resistance. Before the 2017 campaign, even for Eritha Akilé Cainion. The African People's Socialist Party, the junta of militant organizations, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Woo! All of the incredible work, for decades here, and we have a powerful program tonight, and really want to appreciate you all for being here this historic evening. And after this incredible St. Petersburg event, this tour is going on to Boston, Massachusetts, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Gainesville, Florida. And if you, thank you. So if you don't have, enough this evening, and I hope you don't, you can join us in going to Gainesville. This is an event hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee, both formed and led by the African People's Socialist Party. And so our three principles of unity are, one, that we organize under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, non-negotiable. They lead this struggle. And two, that we recognize African people have the right to lead their own struggle. We can't tell them what to do with their struggle for their liberation. We benefit from white power, so a black power movement, shouldn't have us telling them what to do. It doesn't make sense, right? And we organize in the white community for reparations. We take responsibility for our own white communities, white neighbors. We take that responsibility, and it is a joy in order to, bring the call for reparations, into our communities and our households. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And so you have the Uhuru movement led by the African People's Socialist Party. And we use the word Uhuru, we're called on to use it as a greeting, as a salutation to keep the freedom of African people on our minds 24/7. So let's practice. Uhuru! 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 Awesome. All right, so before we begin this incredible program, I do want to make some very important salutes. So first is our keynote speaker tonight, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, our leader and the founder of the Uhuru movement, the author of Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution, that you can purchase tonight, and that is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I also want to salute the deputy chair of the African People's Socialist Party, the architect of the Black Power Blueprint, an incredible program for African self-determination, economic self-reliance, that all of the reparations that we raise in this period are going to. And that is Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela. So I want to salute her. And to also salute, mentioned her earlier, running for City Council District 7 on a platform of reparations and anti-gentrification, and also the Director for Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party, and the Editor-in-Chief of the Burning Spear newspaper that you definitely want to get a copy of this evening, and that is the incredible Eritha Akilé Cainion. And just a few more here. I want to salute all other members of the African People's Socialist Party here, Temba Shabanda, and everyone else. I really want to salute all members of the African People's Socialist Party. I want to salute the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, our leadership in the entire Solidarity movement, and the author of Overturning the Culture of Violence. And you'll get to hear from her tonight, Penny Hess. And I want to salute the national chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the field director for the campaign for Eritha Akilé Cainion, Jesse Nevel. And last but not least, I want to make a dedication to a giant of the African Revolution who kept the Burning Spear newspaper burning for decades, who joined the African People's Socialist Party in 1974, 2 years after its founding, and just passed away this July, but who lives on in the African liberation movement, Omali Kefing. And we're going to practice some chants. So when I say, long live Omali Kefing, you say, long live. Long live Omali Kefing. Long live. Hurrah. Yes. And we will be having a Q&A. So if you have, any questions or comments that you want to, write down and save till then, please do so. And before I introduce our first speaker tonight, we practiced one chant. I want to practice two more. And those are unity through reparations, the first one. So I say unity through, and you say reparations. Unity through? Reparations. Unity through? Reparations. Awesome. And then lastly, but not leastly, reparations now. So reparations now! Reparations now! Uhuru! And now it is my absolute honor to introduce the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Penny Hess has been a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee since its founding in 1976, working under the party's leadership to carry out Chairman Omali Yeshitela's brilliant scientific strategy of organizing members of the colonizer settler nation to break our allegiance to imperialism and to unite in principled and material solidarity with the African Revolution. Penny Hess was the first white person to become a revolutionary African internationalist by joining the African People's Solidarity Committee and taking up the call to build the movement for white reparations to African people. Chairwoman Penny speaks and organizes throughout the U.S. and Europe to educate white people about the history of colonialism and slavery that we have historically benefited from and participated in, and how we can be a part of rectifying our relationship to the rest of humanity. She is the author of Overturning the Culture of Violence, which you can purchase tonight, an incredible book summing up, our relationship with African people through the social system. And I just really want to salute her and welcome her. Let's bring up Chairwoman Penny Hess. Uhuru. I'm very self-critical, everyone. First, we are showing a video that she co-made, and we can see her incredible effort for reparations through it. So that is first.
Slavery, genocide, theft, rape, and colonialism built parasitic capitalism colonized peoples who are rising up and fighting for their liberation no matter the price. Capitalism was born and got rich from assaulting Africa, kidnapping African people, enslaving them, creating a giant world economy around selling African human beings as commodities on land stolen from the indigenous people and drenched in their blood. This is why capitalism is by nature parasitic, requiring lethal armies and unending warfare, capturing every independent, proud, and self-determining people on the planet, trapping them in the deadly web of degradation called colonialism, neocolonialism, and dependency for our benefit. Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Capitalism was born in disrepute of the rapes, massacres, occupations, genocides, colonialism, and every despicable act humans are capable of inflicting. What capitalism did was to rip the vast majority of humans out of the productive process in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and what has come to be known as the Americas. The hundreds of millions dead due to the slave trade and slavery itself, the millions exterminated everywhere Europeans ventured. These are people whose hands were forever removed from a relationship with nature that would result in production. Europeans achieved their national identity by way of this bloody process. This is not something that only happened a long time ago. The world's peoples are suffering the consequence of capitalism's emergence right now.
So the configuration of an entire planet constructed for the gain, pleasure, enrichment, and intellectual advancement of a tiny minority of the population of the world at the expense of everybody else. A status we have never hesitated to murder and terrorize to maintain. Potential scientists whipped to death in the cotton fields, teachers hanged from trees in Georgia, doctors dead in childbirth somewhere on the south side of Chicago, artists hogtied in the woods of Alabama. It has been said that the very struggle for life on the plantation required absolute genius. The countless, nameless African people whose brilliance, even today, is expressed in the mere act of survival, a survival that depends on the ability to produce and reproduce life for the colonizer, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela stated. The dreams and aspirations of centuries of African people were hijacked to feed our children, build our cities, pave our streets, create our futures, realize our dreams, giving us our generational wealth that puts a down payment on our first house and pays our student loans. Thus, the two Americas, the colonizer and the colonized. Between us and African people, a wall of colonialism backed up by the razor wire of the police state. The income gap, the education gap, the jails, the police, the health care, the experience of democratic rights, the lives of the oppressors and the oppressed, one living at the expense of the other. At the root of every problem in the world today, police murders and white nationalist violence, growing poverty, the burning of the Amazon, the threat of nuclear war, the daily bombing of Palestine, U.S. drone strikes in the Middle East, gender and women's oppression. Trace it all back, and it all has the same root: parasitic capitalism, a filthy, blood-sucking social system with nothing but profit for a motive, slaughter and conquest that expects and gets our unity and complicity, and ends that justify all means. At the root and foundation of capitalism is parasitism, slavery, genocide, and colonialism. Thus, reparations is the revolutionary demand. The foundation is rising up because this system must go. There is no reform or beautiful, visionary world that can be built on a foundation of rot, violence, rape, and pillage. The foundation must go. The entire system must go. The colonial state must go. The majority of humanity is demanding to be free, unleashing their leadership and genius for the benefit of the people, not profit and plunder. Reparations is a demand of the African Revolution because
African people are going to be free.
African people are organized in a party fiercely led by the interest of the African working class, the African People's Socialist Party, which leads Uhuru Solidarity Movement too.
African people are going to wield power. We are serious about governing ourselves. We are fighting colonialism wherever we have been dispersed, fighting for one liberated Africa, the return of our people, resources, land, and value of our stolen labor.
Reparations. Africa's oil is African people's oil. Africa's coltan and diamonds belong to African people. Africa's land is theirs. The value of stolen African labor belongs to African workers. African revolution, bringing all oppressed people with them, uplifting everyone who wants to come, including you and me.
Therefore, the African revolution is the impetus for all revolution, the weakest link of imperialism embedded within its foundation, pedestal, and very borders, the cornerstone of parasitic capitalism.
The African People's Socialist Party has assigned us to actually pay reparations to African people, to the African Revolution, returning their stolen wealth. Through reparations, we make our self-criticism to African people and the colonized of the earth. Reparations is the true redistribution of the wealth of the world. Through reparations, we turn loose our whiteness, no longer upholding a system that feeds our desires through theft and violence. So we have work to do, a true revolutionary assignment that frees us from the despair that comes from being imperialist foot soldiers against the rest of the world. Within the belly of the capitalist beast, in our own communities, we are called on to win every white woman, man, and child to help seize the stolen wealth and return it to the African liberation movement as a revolutionary act, as a positive and optimistic stand that helps turn the world right side up, unites with the future of the liberated African nation, creating a world of peace, of justice, of universal prosperity, productivity, and power in the hands of colonized workers. A world without oppressors and oppressed, under the leadership of the African working class, in solidarity with all living beings, constructing a planet in which all people can live and thrive, no one at the expense of anybody else.
Please join me in welcoming the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess.
Uhuru, unity through. Uhuru, I want to welcome everybody to the Day of Reparations to African people here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And as I want to thank Comrade Jackson for that great introduction as the MC. And I want to salute the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the mass organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party in the white community, organizing for reparations to African people. And I want to salute Deputy Chair Ona Yeshitela, who is the leadership of the Economic Front and the Office of the Deputy Chair of the African People's Socialist Party. Many of us in the African People's Solidarity Committee are under the leadership of Deputy Chair. I want to salute Akilé, who is the editor of The Burning Spear, a leading member of the African People's Socialist Party, and the next District 7 City Councilwoman in St. Petersburg, making the South Side black again. And before I salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, I also want to salute Comrade Nevel, who is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and also playing a really important role under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party in this incredible campaign, taking on a cadre stand, the correct stand that white people should take under the leadership of the African Revolution, doing whatever has to be done, a principled and honest leader of our movement. So I want to salute Comrade Jesse. And I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is the leader of the African People's Socialist Party and the leader of the African People's Solidarity Committee as well. Chairman Omali Yeshitela has continued to fight for the liberation of Africa and African people all over the world for the last more than 50 years. He is still fighting. He is still speaking. He was speaking at Oxford University this year, where he won the debate about the question of the unity of Africa and African people, 2-1 in an electrifying video that has gone viral all around the world. He continues to lead this struggle not only here inside the borders of the United States, but on the continent of Africa, in Johannesburg, occupied Azania, and many other countries in Africa, and London, and Paris, and all around the world. And Chairman's not just in St. Petersburg. He travels the world. He is organized. And as he said on that video, he is determined that African people will be free in his lifetime. That African People's Solidarity Committee, which I'm the chair of, is the organization of white people formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party for white people to extend the struggle of the African Revolution into the belly of the beast. It is our responsibility to go into the white community and organize others just like ourselves to tell the truth that we've just seen in that video, what we have done, who we are, and that we owe reparations to African people. And as the chairman has made it clear, as a revolutionary demand, not charity, not a favor, not a little payout, everything we have is stolen from African people, and that's what we want to talk about tonight. The chairman has told us that he is working for and has his entire life the understanding that all African people everywhere are one people, an African nation who has been forcibly dispersed by the Europeans who came out of our caves and our poverty in Europe and assaulted Africa, turned African human beings into commodities for sale, and stole the genius, the brilliance, the labor, the self-determination, the resources, everything, the civilization of African people, and colonized it, and that was the foundation of the capitalist system. This is what Chairman Omali is telling, and I'm saying this because I would never understand this on my own. This is what Chairman Omali Yeshitela has shown to be the truth. Nobody can deny that. This country was built on the enslavement of African people and the theft of indigenous people's land. And that's the basis for the rising of the capitalist system itself. So this is what the chairman tells us. It makes sense to me and to all white people who want to change the world, not just try to make a place and protest within it, but to do something to change the world. Then we have the responsibility to go back into the white society, to our parents, to our schools, to the Girl Scouts, to the church, to the university, everywhere, and raise up that white people owe reparations to African people, that the struggle is not a struggle against racism, not just the ideas in the heads of white people, but against a colonial domination by the state power, backed up by all of the military of the United States government, the police department, the jails, the prisons, everything that the U.S. does. It is not racism. It is a colonial domination, as the chairman has said, that any place else in the world we would talk about colonialism, the political and economic system that oppresses a whole people for the benefit of the colonizer nation. And we are the colonizer nation. And so therefore there's a material basis for the fact that we sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people. That this whole question of reparations is the critical question today. That it is much bigger than St. Petersburg. It is much bigger than an election. This is about transforming the world. And just as it said in that video, any problem that we want to solve has to go back to the question that African people are bodies in this pedestal on whose backs we stand. And until, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has fought for, until African people have power over their lives, not changing the ideas in white people's heads, power and the return of their stolen resources, nothing will be changed on this planet, except that there might be a few things that we, as white women or LGBTQ, could get rights, but it's rights at the expense of everybody else. And right now, a lot of white people are galvanized around this question of climate change. And some places, millions, in the millions of white people are marching about that. But the fact is, the climate change, they talk about extinction. How many millions of indigenous and African people are already extinct by this system? This system was built on changing the climate by murdering and slaughtering and committing genocide against millions and millions and millions of people, and it's part of the same process. So we're not going to solve this problem when the US government continues to have power as the imperialist dominant power on the whole earth, when the oil companies would slaughter everybody in Iraq to get the oil and other places in the Middle East. They're not going to give up their power. It has to be overturned, and the only way a new system can be built is through the leadership of the African working class. White people are never going to do it. We've sold out everybody over and over and over again. That's our history. That's documented. We can read that. But I do know that I read a statistic that 50% of young people, young white people, want to see socialism. They want to see socialism inside this country. Well, the road to socialism is painted black. It's painted black. It's led by the African working class, and we can be under the leadership of that and be part of building a new world. So the party, the African People's Socialist Party, has defined reparations as a revolutionary demand. In 1982, the African People's Socialist Party held the first tribunal on reparations to African people. It was held in Brooklyn, New York, 1982, and it wasn't a call for, as I said, a payout or a favor. It was a call that was an indictment of the U.S. government for its enslavement of African people and continued colonization of the African population. And the party at that time made a goal that they would make reparations a household word. Nobody'd heard of it in 1982. Everybody's heard of it today. That's the work of the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Believe that? And the African People's Socialist Party believed and still believes and knows that the question of reparations is based in the masses of the people, not in lawyers taking it to court, although that's fine, not suing big corporations or other kinds of things like that. Those are good things, that's fine, but the movement, the revolutionary movement, is based in the people and the demand among the African working class for reparations as the revolutionary demand. So the chairman has always said that he was proud to have been born at a time when revolution was the main trend in the world. In the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, when Che Guevara was alive, when Ho Chi Minh and Mao Zedong and all of the leaders around the world who were fighting for the people, and that the U.S. responded to that around the world and inside this country with what is called a counterinsurgency, a war without terms, a war against the movement of African people that murdered, assassinated the leaders such as Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and many, many, many others, many of whom are still in prison today. And there was no accountability. U.S. has, and European countries have what's called the Geneva Conventions to make sure that war is done politely and all of these things happen, not when it's a war against African people rising up to be free. And I believe that you are here tonight because you believe that African people have to be free, that there is no progressive world without the freedom, liberation, and leadership of the African working class. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela has been the only one who has continued to fight for the liberation of African people, the unity, the fact that Africa and all its resources belong to African people, and the right of all oppressed and colonized peoples to be free. So we sit on this pedestal as white people, of African people turned into commodities for sale, into human machines, an assault on Africa, rape, plunder, violence, genocide, and that's what's created two Americas, two realities in which the white population has social wealth, has what's some call generational wealth, 20 to 80 times the wealth that white families have versus African families. Sometimes on an average, $165,000 most white families have in assets, savings accounts, house, whereas African people have $8. That was in the newspaper about Boston. African people in Boston have $8, and in general, it's going to zero, they say, if the trend continues that it would take 280 years for African people to, quote, catch up. And we know that that would never happen. And so what I want to go through something very quickly on this PowerPoint tonight. I want to say a little bit about what our role is and what we have done as white people and the terror that we have inflicted upon Africans, our self-criticism that has to be made. And I want to quantify it. And I want to show you how much money was made from that, although you can't really quantify reparations because so many lives were destroyed, so many people whose aspirations became our ability to have dreams and aspirations at the expense of African people. So we participated in this colonialism. We've lynched, we've burned, we've tortured, we've done everything possible to make money off the backs of African people. So I just want to go for a few points here. I only have a few more minutes, but I do want to say that the enslavement of African people was the most productive work in history up until that time. It created more wealth through the violence against the African population enslaved inside the United States and the Caribbean and Brazil and other places in South America than had ever been amassed in history. And that the kidnapping, sale, and stolen labor of African people over 200 years brought at least $3.5 trillion to Britain. That between 1619 and 1865, an estimated 222.5 million hours of forced labor, and I believe that that is an underestimation, would be worth now $97 trillion owed to African people. And I'm saying owed, who has that? We have it. We have that money. That in 1860 alone, there were 4 million enslaved African people who were worth $3.5 billion, the largest single financial asset in the entire US economy. Not land, not oil wells, not gold. African human beings is what Wall Street used as collateral on loans to create and further develop the US capitalist economy. That actually Britain paid reparations, quote unquote, in 1838 to the slave masters because Britain ended chattel slavery in 1838. That's because it then became direct colonialism was more profitable for them. So they paid $20 billion to 46,000 British and Scottish owners of African human beings for the loss of their property, which was 800,000 enslaved African people. And that $20 billion was critical for the establishment of the economic infrastructure of Britain and the whole British Isles and the Caribbean at that time. So after the importation from Africa was banned in the United States in 1808, there was a second trade sale of African people through breeding. And we spoke in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm from around there. About a week ago, Louisville was a slave breeding state, and that's where the term being sold down the river came from, where African people were forced, women were forced to have babies. Those babies were sold, and also that African people, Thomas Jefferson said to George Washington that the sale of African children increased Virginia's capital stock by 4% annually. He sold many, many, many African children. He had African children enslaved in a nail factory, and you can read about that in history. And also the coffles of African people. Most African people were forced marched, who were tied with chains, who were chained neck to neck, walking from Louisville or Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, to Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, 1,000 miles, walking through the South that way. Women with babies, nursing, this hideous, hideous thing. So there's many more things. I know my time is up. There's many more things that we could talk about, because we owe reparations. Everything we have is stolen. It must go back to African people if the world is going to be transformed. And I want to call on people from the white community to listen, to open our minds to what we hear tonight, and to join organization, to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. No matter how much that we can think about this, read about it, sit in a cafe and talk about it, we have to do something, and we have to be organized. We cannot leave this crisis, this vicious, foul, capitalist system that is built on suffering, and people are suffering all around the world in order for us to live. We can't leave this for another generation. We have to take it on, and it is our future as well. Paying reparations is not punitive. It's a positive stand. It's our self-criticism to African people. It enables us to join the people on the planet Earth and not be their policemen, not be carrying out the will of the United States government and its war, and be complicit and think only about our stomachs and pocketbooks and self-interest, and be part of a world that can be changing. And we have a role to play. We've got to go back inside the belly of the beast and take this on as we are. So I want to welcome everybody here tonight. I'm looking very much forward to the other presentations, and I want to end by saying unity through reparations. Uhuru.
Uhuru. What an incredible presentation. All right, moving this forward. All right, as we know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Really want to salute Chairwoman Penny. Uhuru. Don't forget to purchase your copy of Overturning the Culture of Violence by Chairwoman Penny Hess. She just has sources and sources after every single chapter, laying out our relationship to, African people and other colonized people. And, we do have to, be organized to carry out the work that needs to be done to repair the damage, to pay reparations. So now it is my absolute honor to introduce the revolutionary leader without whose vision, theoretical worldview, and strategy to win revolution in his lifetime, none of us would be here today. And this year, he won the Oxford Union debate on the question of African unity and liberation. Recognized as the world leader he is, he has single-handedly led the struggle to complete the Black Revolution of the 1960s in the aftermath of the U.S. government's brutal counterinsurgency war to crush the righteous struggle of African people for their liberation and self-determination. For 50 years, this brilliant African revolutionary leader has has built from the ashes of defeat a global revolutionary movement of African workers uniting as one nation in a unified strategy to liberate their Africa and Africa's resources as the birthright of every African person on the planet. He is the author of many works, key in the understanding of how to move the African revolution forward and carry it to fruition, including his most recent book and report to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, Vanguard, the Advanced Attachment of the African Revolution, which you can purchase today. He is the founder and leader of the Uhuru movement and provides leadership for the entire world revolutionary struggle, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. Please stand and welcome Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru!
Uhuru. Uhuru. Brothers, sisters, comrades, first I'd like to really express my appreciation to Jackson for that introduction. And also I wanted to salute Chairwoman Penny Hess from the African People's Solidarity Committee. That was an incredible presentation that she just made. And I thought it was extremely informative. And also Jesse Nevel, who is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and the entire leadership of both the African People Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement. I want to express my deep, most profound appreciation to you. And I cannot move forward without also saluting Comrade Onazene Yeshitela, whose work is exemplified by this building and this space that we occupy at this moment. Brothers and sisters and comrades, this event, part of the Days in Reparation to African People, is something that stemmed initially from Days in Solidarity with African People. This is something that the Solidarity Movement, under my direction of the African People's Socialist Party, initiated as part of the extraordinarily important work that has to be done in many ways to rescue white people from this horrible fate that awaits you otherwise, separate, voluntarily separate, isolated from the rest of humanity. In this struggle to maintain the status quo, which is based on slavery and colonialism. It's a horrible place to be. It's the most frightening place, I would imagine, not being able to go anywhere without being conscious of the fact that the world is out to get you. Out to get you because the world wants a return of all of the resources that's been stolen from us. That all the resources, the vast majority of the resources of the world is in some white community somewhere. And that there are people who in states of desperation are trying to find a way to get it back because we are dying, because people are suffering, because we cannot guarantee our children a future without having access to our own resources, not resources that we've stolen from anybody else. We recognize that as we have this discussion that we are not indigenous to this land, but neither are white people indigenous to this land. This is stolen land. And what we see here in terms of production has stolen labor. So we recognize that the whole world economy, the configuration of the world economy, has come from stolen labor, black labor, African labor, and others who were colonized and stolen land, the indigenous peoples here and various other places around the world. We recognize that's its origin. That's why we can say reparations is a revolutionary demand, because people need the ability to live. So this Days in Reparation of African People is really something that we think is important for white people, for Europeans. And because it's about reparations, of course, Africans coming too. because they want to see what's happening with this incredibly important question. But just listening to what Comrade Penny Hess has just presented to us helps me a lot, because what she's just done is explain to you why I'm a revolutionary and why we cannot live with this social system. A social system based on slavery and genocide has no redeeming qualities. I don't care what you say. There's nothing that can redeem this. And I know it's a social system, as I just mentioned, based on slavery and colonialism. We live in a world where the vast majority of people on this earth do not have clean water, do not have electricity, right? And wondering every day how they're going to live. This is the world we live in. And of course, the amazing exception to this are Europeans. And Europeans who come from the most hostile places in the world in terms of nature and productivity, etc. And in fact, who for the short 4 years of 1347 and 1351, we like to remind people half the white people on earth died. And you can lose half of a population and still have anything that looks like a viable economy. Not in 4 years, you can't do that. And then for the next 50 or 100 years, that and other plagues, because that's what we're talking about, the plague, the Black Plague as it was characterized, and I won't comment on that. I think that's still to come, but that's another question. But you cannot even imagine something like a viable economy under those circumstances. And so what we saw is that Europe rescued itself. And it rescued itself through this thing that's been characterized as a slave trade, where Europe went out. And what we say Europe, because even that's a mischaracterization. There was no such thing as Europe. There was just this area that was known as a place of warring tribes, always at each other's throats, and where people were identified who would define themselves primarily in relationship to each other in terms of these tribes. You're talking about the Celts and the Normans, and the whole host of others who defined themselves primarily in relationship to each other. That was no Europe. That was no white man at this time. And what consolidated this common identity was slavery. When Europe went out and began to capture Africans and built an economy around that and rescued themselves from that. This is the thing that all the white countries who were involved in this and who built this economy consolidated their identity. So now it was not them identifying themselves or defining themselves primarily in relationship to each other, but now primarily in relationship to the rest of us. This is the origin of Europe. This is the origin of the white man. This is the origin of the black man. This came about as this consequence of definition. This is the origin of the European nation through stealing and resources from the rest of us. So you have this monstrosity that comes into existence. And I say it's a monstrosity. And the vast majority of the peoples on earth have experienced it as a monstrosity, but that's not been true of Europe and Europeans. Have wonderful dreams and aspirations. Expect wonderful things for yourselves and for your children. Expect that they will have a decent life and a life that's better than your own. This is what most Europeans expect and anticipate. And the fact, however, is that every dream, every aspiration for yourself and for your children requires drone strikes in Afghanistan, requires the police violence in the barrios and ghettos, colonial ghettos in this country, colonial domination, the starvation of people in Venezuela that you see happening today that you want to blame on Trump, the theft of half of Mexico, more than half of Mexico. You know this. Even when Trump started talking about a wall and the Democrats act like they were opposed to him talking about a wall when Obama had kicked out more Mexicans than any president in history. You knew that they were full of stuff when they were talking about that. You knew when they were talking about that they had have no problem with walls, because if they did, they say something about those walls they got all over occupied Palestine that they call Israel. And you don't say anything about that. You knew that this nonsense they talk about the walls was just that, because the fact of the matter is half of Mexico, more than half of Mexico was taken at gunpoint. Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah. I mean, these are territories that were stolen from Mexico at gunpoint, and you're talking about a damn wall? And then the Mexicans become the illegals, aliens. And so you're here today just like me because you're opposed to that nonsense, and because you want to wreak havoc with this narrative, this fanciful narrative that has been created to explain the world. And we say, we know that's not true. And the reality, of course, is that you will never find an oppressor or a society that's capable of denouncing itself unless it's at gunpoint. And to the point where the explanation, of course, that stems from the nature of the economic base in this economy. This whole society that we live in, and much of the world, has as its economic base colonialism and slavery. And stemming from that economic base, that is what they call a superstructure. And this superstructure is the ideological assumptions associated with this. It's the legal institutions, it's culture, and what have you. In many instances, it's even religion. And this economic base born of slavery will create a superstructure, an explanation of itself that will not say we are rich because we killed the indigenous people, because we enslaved and murdered and brutalized and raped Africans and other people around the world. It would not say that. It would say we are rich because the indigenous people were slothful and did not know what to do with the land until we came here and rescued them from that. They would come up with their stories about the lazy Mexicans who always want to take the siestas. They would tell us about shiftless niggers who just won't do it, and if we hadn't rescued them from the jungles, they would be living as savages today. They would tell us that the problem in our community is because young black men wear their pants sagging, and babies having babies and nonsense like this. This is the garbage that they create. They churn it out of factories to explain this relationship. And like George Bush, they would tell us that they hate us, meaning the rest of the world, because, as Bush said, we are good. And so white people move with this silly assumption, but it's so gratifying. You just think about it. You know who you are when you look in the mirror, right? When you're just looking at yourself, you know exactly who you are. But this notion of you, all these things that you never knew about, right? Until it's compared to the Africans and other people, oh, that's so gratifying. And that's why this whole question of racism and struggling against racism is such a nonsensical thing, because this too, to say that our struggle is against racism is to put white people in the center. I mean, what we are fighting is to get white people to like us. Or to, and of course the solution is, if you want white people to like you, you cannot hit them on the head with a brick. You cannot say anything that would upset them, make them angry. You can't demand reparations. You can't demand justice, because it's certainly not in the voice the way I'm sounding now, right? Because then they won't like you, right? And so what you do is you're in this unending, this Sisyphean struggle to become more like white people, to talk like white people, right? And to walk like white people, right? And mutilate yourself like Michael Jackson, you know, most talented genius, but afflicted with this whole nonsense about to be successful, you got to be white. And so he dies looking like a very old white woman. And this is the plague. This is what has been, this is the consequence of the being ruled and brutalized by this kind of social system. And this is a product, an ideological product. This is an ideological product. This becomes a part of the superstructure that explains reality that stems from slavery and colonialism becomes a part of the superstructure. They preach it in the pulpits and every other institution that you have access to. I was looking a moment ago about what they call nationalism in Africa and Asia. And it's supposedly written by somebody who likes us, but was going on to talk about how, in the introduction, which is longer than the rest of the book, and it's a long book, right, talks about how, what the British did in India. Yeah, they might have upset some people, it might have caused some disruption, but they did bring certain kinds of stability to England, and they brought certain things like that to Africa and to African people too, despite all of the horrors that were inflicted on black people around the world. So it's nonsense. And we have this opportunity today and to have this discussion. And this is a discussion that is not designed to make you feel good. In fact, we want to just be able to get to the essence of the question so that we can know how to solve it. We want to see the world just like it is, not like we'd wish for it to be, right? And so that means that we have to really look at it, and this is what we're doing. And so we come up with a scientific explanation. We know that we live in this horrible social system. Comrade Penny just spoke a moment ago, and she said something about some polls showing like 50% perhaps of white people believe in socialism, or they think they want socialism. Of course, this is probably Bernie Sanders' socialism. And, Bernie Sanders, says he's a socialist, and to prove it, he says that he believes that workers should get $15 an hour over a number of years, right? And there should be universal health care and some stuff like that. Well, I don't know what kind of socialism Bernie is talking about. But the reality is that the socialism that I understand comes about as a consequence of the fight against capitalism. You see, you cannot have capitalism and socialism coexisting as quietly as it's kept. Socialism is a social system, just like capitalism is a social system. And for socialism to come into existence, it's got to go to struggle against capitalism. It's got to wipe capitalism out. And that's the only way it can come into existence. And I think it's necessary to say that. And that's shocking to some people. Some liberals don't like this idea. They like change, gradual change. They like an Obama change, right? But they don't like change, you understand? They don't like transformation. They like what, we give this example and the difference in change and development. We want development. We're not looking for change. A little butterfly a little caterpillar, a little worm turns into a big worm, a fat worm, etc. That's change. But the worm that changed into the butterfly, that's transformation. That's what we want, development, real development. We want butterflies and not fat worms, right? So we're looking for development. We're not looking for just some change in the degree, just a lesser pregnancy, so to speak, right? We want to recognize that pregnant is pregnant, right? And Malcolm X used to give this example of liberals who talk about how they stab you in the back with a 9-inch blade and drag it out for 3 inches and say, look how much progress has been made, right? No, that's not progress, you see. So we're talking about an entirely different kind of social system. But capitalism is cruel, it's vicious. It was born of slavery and genocide. And you shouldn't be threatened by that recognition. And I know everybody with an address, a mailbox here, is concerned about that, because if you say that this ain't my land, whose land is it, right? It's the indigenous people's land. You can't get around that. It might not, if they're only 16, it's still theirs. And it's still stolen. And the people have been uprooted, and they're paying a horrible price even today as we have this discussion on these concentration camps that are euphemistically referred to as reservations with a lifespan in the 40s. This is what's happening to the indigenous people here that are so nobly held up and put on corns in this country, and we speak of them so nobly and what have you after we wipe them out, and we use them on our sports mascots and things like that. It's nothing but a desecration. It's a horrible offense that's been made against a colonized people who have been put under almost like under extreme subjugation. So we're talking about a different kind of social system. And don't be afraid of that. And I know, like a lot of, we say we want black power, we want resources, and the next thing we hear is, we hear two things. One, first we hear from somebody who said, well, what about the Indians? Like, you was going to give everything to the Indians until I said something, right? So that's one thing. That's the first thing that we hear, right? And then the next thing, well, what about the white people? We say, we want justice, we want freedom, we want the return of our resources, we want liberation, we want black power. What about the white people? We say, take your chances just like every damn body else. You know, that's what you do. That's what about the white people. Why in the hell is what about the white people, right? You take your chances on this planet Earth just like everybody else. That's what about the white people. Pee in the bottle and try to get a job, just like the other people have to do to survive in this situation. So I'm a revolutionary because this social system has to go. You know it's a social system that's based on exploitation. Even if the only reason that white people cannot clearly see the exploitation is because the indigenous people are there on those reservations and African people are here, and you are able to measure your existence by how we live and how we are summed up for you, right? This is why. Otherwise, you'd have to look yourselves right in the eye and see what the hell you're doing and what your bosses are doing to you and what your neighbor is doing to you and what these other white people are doing to you. And you wouldn't, but now you have to be more afraid of this African who meanders into your community after dark, right? Or who might say something to you if you meander into her community after dark. We don't have to live like this, and we don't want to live like this. And the only way out of this, of course, is to overturn this social system, this relationship. I'm saying that African people have to be free. I'm saying that we live in a political economy that rests upon a pedestal of slavery and colonialism, that the system is threatened every time any free people on the planet Earth moves in some way that is independent of what the rulers of this world want us to move. That's why Venezuela is such a threat. That's why even people in Afghanistan are such a threat. And of course, they want to maintain a stranglehold on the resources of the people in Afghanistan and the resources of the people in Venezuela. And the resources in this community, which is why I'm gentrified every place in this country. African people being pushed out of communities, and this functions as a kind of mining for white people. White working class, upper working class white people in pickup trucks ride through our communities on a regular basis with their clipboards and taking down addresses and looking for taking this one and that one and that one and what they call flipping it, right? And then the first thing they do is set up a neighborhood association of white people, right? And the police work with the neighborhood association of white people, and they decide that they don't like the fact that there are certain repairs that need to be made to the house, and they report it to the city, and then the city comes and threatens a little old widow, African widow, whose husband been dead for 15 years and incapable of repairing her place, and they place a lien on it, and they end up taking it that way, or they make the community so dangerous that most people don't want to live there, or you think it's so dangerous that most people, this happens to us every day. It's a mining operation. So you get just ordinary white people. These are not capitalists. These are not the bourgeoisie. This is just a guy who's got a little extra cash that I can't get. He can borrow money that I can't get. I put money in the bank. I got a bank account. And African people have bank accounts. And the banks use our money to make money with. They loan our money to other people and make money with it. But when I go to try to borrow my own money or borrow some money, they tell me why I can't get my money because I don't know how to do business plans, they say. Or I put money in the mall. I spend money at the mall. And the mall takes that money and put it in the bank. My money too. And then the bank loans that money to other people who don't live in my community so that they can make money from that money. I put money in the church. Now, I don't do that. I'm a lie. I would never. But some of y'all feeding Reverend Chicken Bone and giving money, a lot of money, all the time, paying. Got the all kinds of money. What are you paying? You're paying for is, what do you call it, the anniversary. You're paying for all kinds of birthdays. Paying because he winked at you last time you were in church. And he gets all this money, and then every Monday he takes your money and put it in the bank. And the bank makes money from your money. We can't get that money, you see. So, but this guy in the pickup truck, riding through my community, he's borrowing that money. What is that? That's double jeopardy, isn't it? At least double jeopardy, right? So he rides in that, in that community, checks this out, then go and get a loan, borrow my money, right? To be able to come and buy my house, right? That I'm being kicked out of because of how the city is cooperating, with the rest of them. This is what we live with on a daily basis. That's why we have to separate from this social system. So African people, many of us have concluded a long time ago, is that we have to be a free and independent and self-governing people. That's what we are practicing right now. We have to be self-governing. We cannot continue to live like this. And one of the things that made reparations such an important demand for our party, because we didn't invent reparations issue. It's been there as long as we've been exploited, as long as we've been ripped off. Everybody believes in payback, right? James Brown made a song about it. We didn't invent this, but the thing that we did as a party is that we, first of all, took this reparations demand beyond slavery, because that's what they were before the party got involved in it. They say we want reparations for slavery. But our investigation showed us that the rate of exploitation has gone greater since slavery. Slavery was a huge looting expedition, but since slavery, the rate of exploitation has even grown greater since slavery. And then the other thing so we say we don't want reparations just for slavery. We want reparations for what happened 30 minutes ago in terms of theft of our resources and the brutalization of our people. And we say that reparations are important because many African people have been convinced by this narrative that somehow white people are just tired of black people being on welfare, that they've just given so much and throwing all this money down this bottomless pit, given to poor black people, et cetera, et cetera. And what reparations demand helps our community to understand is that we're not living off reparations from white people. White people have been living off welfare from black people for the last 400 or 500 years. This is what happens. This changes the narrative. It takes us off of this pitiful kind of defensive stance that we're on. It removes us from the control of those forces who would have us on our bellies all the time pleading and begging for some kind of change. So this is part of what the party has done. In 1981, our parties held our first Congress after 9 years of existence. And at that Congress, we passed a resolution saying that we were going to really push the demand for reparations. In 1982, the party organized the first World Tribunal on Reparations for African People in Brooklyn, New York, and with several hundred people there, with international judges that we had chosen, using international law as the basis for it. We put the United States government itself on trial for the treatment of African people. We put forth reparations as one of the resolutions to resolve what the United States has done to us. And the people voted yes, the United States owes us reparations. And then for the next 12 years, we held these reparations tribunals in various states around the United States. And the reason we were doing this is because it was clear to us that if reparations was to be a reality, it's not going to come as a consequence of the Congress. It's not going to come as a consequence of something that some judge said. It's going to come as a consequence of the masses of African people demanding reparations. And once the people say it, the people won't even have to wait for a Congress or wait for a judge. People will get the reparations. The thing is, the people have to believe it and understand it's our just right. And that's what revolution is all about as well. So then we did that, and then in 1976, we had already created the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization that is responsible for leading the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And in 1985, the African People's Solidarity Committee recognized that its work needs to revolve around reparations. This is important. I'm going to say two things about that. First, the people have asked how we survived the African People's Socialist Party. And because the United States government murdered people all around this country and around the world. They killed Lumumba, they overthrew Nkrumah in Congo and in Ghana, in Africa. They chased down, wounded Che Guevara in Bolivia and murdered him. And they murdered Fred Hampton. They murdered something like 30-some-odd members of the Black Panther Party in 1968 alone. And I was in and out of prison so much that I had to check the newspaper to find out where I was. It was a real war that was made against our struggle for happiness. That's all we were fighting for, happiness in return of our stolen resources. And so, but we are still here. There are people who I knew and worked with. My daughters knew Stokely Carmichael when he was Stokely Carmichael, who came to our house. And at the time, we assumed that he was a revolutionary. People like Huey Newton, who I spent, some of the last days of his life, at his bedside and what have you. But they didn't make it, and there were other people who didn't survive it. And they say, well, how did you survive? And the way we survived is because we opened up a new front in the struggle. We took the war into the white community. We took the war into the white community. And I'm saying this for all those doubting Thomases about the relationship that we have with the African People's Solidarity Committee, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We took the war we opened up a whole new front. And so that's where the African People's Solidarity Committee went into the white community. We went into the white community, began to organize white people for black power. And just like in our communities, you can see a Barack Hussein Obama, who is nothing but white power and blackface. We put black power in white faces in the white community. And so that's one of the ways that we were able to do that. And secondly, what we did was in 1985, by 1985, the Solidarity Movement had come to understand that its work needs to be reparations. We don't need no handouts from white people who like us, the white people who love us. We need, Che Guevara once said that it's not a matter of well-wishing. What is it then? Sharing the same fate, whether in victory or in death. We don't need charity. Right? And the fact is that when white people stand on the side of the black liberation movement, they are doing themselves the biggest favor possible. And I don't say this carelessly. I say this because white women who say they hate being oppressed, white homosexuals who say they hate being oppressed, white workers who say they hate being exploited, all of them are oppressed and exploited by white power, by white power, by white power. And white power has its origin in slavery and colonialism, and capitalism was born as white power. White power was born as capitalism. If you want to get rid of it, then you get rid of the pedestal that it rests on, and that is the oppression of Africans and other peoples around the world. When you join with this movement, you join to overturn the system that oppresses and exploits everybody. So do yourself a favor and join this movement. And so I wanted to say those things, and to say that we believe that, that we can live in a world without exploitation. And you have to believe that too. We have to end this kind of social system that requires workers and bosses and slavers and slave masters. It's got to go. And you have to have enough confidence in your ability to do that. Because I know most of us have been sold a bill of goods. And it's really interesting because we've seen slaves who bemoan the thought of ending slavery because who's going to take care of us now? When the fact is that, fool, you've been taking care of them all this time. You don't need him, he needs you. And that's the reality that we have. And most people often are afraid because we've been bamboozled. We think that the politicians that say they speak for us and these so-called leaders, they are the smart ones. They must know what they are talking about, otherwise they wouldn't be there. It didn't have anything to do with the $1 billion contribution that they got from the corporations, right? They're just smart, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be there, right? So what we are saying is that we can build a new world. And we're committed to that. And the African People's Social Party, we have to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to do this because we don't have a future without it. We must do it. And if only because of the debilitating impact on the morale of our people. I mean, this humiliation that we experience every day of our existence, to open up a newspaper and to see a murderer or who wears a badge or something like that kill and come up with the most inane, the stupid, most insidiously crooked explanation for why this person has just done it. And then if the person so happens, if it's so egregious and they can't get around doing something to the cop, then you got a stupid judge and a stupid brother who has bought the narrative of white power, who wants to embrace and take the person home with them if they can. We can't live with this. We have to have a totally new social system. The masses of African working people must regain confidence in our ability to run our own affairs. That's what this party is all about. That's what it is that we have to do. So this is a call. I want to share something with you, just briefly. And this is a quote from Vanguard. It was written in 1955 by a man named Aimé Césaire, who from Martinique. He was writing on the colonial question. And this is what you must understand. We are not suffering from racism. It's colonialism. How do you solve the racism problem? I'm asking you this. All you anti-racists, when do you know you won the fight against racism? I mean, does somebody come out with a flag and say, we surrender? Or do you sign a document or a treaty? How do you know when you got it? You don't. It's stupid. It's foolish. And only the petty bourgeoisie that suffers an self-alienation from the African petty bourgeoisie, who flattered by the presence of white people, would even push us in that stupid direction. And of course, white people, I can't imagine being white. I'm just thinking about this, going home and saying, oh, wow, as much as we've done to them, et cetera, they still want to be with us, they still love us, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of silliness is that? Hey, bomb your churches, kill you trying to go to the same schools and stuff like that, and instead of trying to get away, you say, I want to live next door to white people. I want to make it I want to make it easier for them to get to me. That's the petty bourgeoisie suffering serious alienation, self-alienation. Ain't no alienation in this room. So here's Aimé Césaire. First, we must study how colonization works to civilize the colonizer, to brutalize him in the true sense of the word, to degrade him, to awaken him to buried instincts, to covetousness. How do you say the word to covet? Covetous, whatever. Violence, race hatred, and moral relativism. And we must show that each time a head is cut off or an eye put out in Vietnam or in France And in France, they accept the fact. Each time a little girl is raped, and in France, they accept the fact. Each time a Madagascan is tortured, and in France, they accept the fact. Civilization acquires another dead weight. A universal regression takes place. A gangrene sets in. A center of infection begins to spread. And that, at the end of all these treaties, they have been violated. That have been violated, all these lies that have been propagated, all these punitive expeditions that have been tolerated, all these prisoners who have been tied up and interrogated, all these patriots who have been tortured. At the end of all the racial pride that has been encouraged, all the boastfulness that has been displayed, a poison has been instilled into the veins of Europe. And slowly but surely, the continent proceeds towards savagery. And then one fine day, the bourgeoisie is awakened by a terrific boomerang effect. The Gestapos are busy. The prisons fill up. The torturers around the racks invent, refine, discuss. People are surprised. They become indignant. They say, how strange. But never mind. It's Nazism. It will pass. And they wait, and they hope, and they hide the truth from themselves, that it is barbarism, the supreme barbarism, the crowning barbarism that sums up all the daily barbarisms, that it is Nazism, yes, but that before they were its victims, they were accomplices, that they tolerated that Nazism before it was inflicted on them, that they absolved it, shut their eyes to it, legitimized it, because until then it had been applied only to non-European peoples, that they have cultivated that Nazism, that they are responsible for it, and that before engulfing the whole edifice of Western Christian civilization in its reddened waters, it oozes, seeps, and trickles from every crack. Yes, it would be worthwhile to study clinically in detail the steps taken by Hitler and Hitlerism, and to reveal to the very distinguished, very humanistic, very Christian bourgeois of the 20th century that without his being aware of it, he was a Hitler inside. He has a Hitler inside him, that Hitler inhabits him, that Hitler is his demon, and that if he rails against him, he is being inconsistent, and that at bottom what he cannot forgive Hitler for is not the crime in itself, the crime against man. It is not the humiliation of man as such. It is the crime against the white man, the humiliation of the white man, and the fact that he applied to Europe colonialist procedures which until then had been reserved exclusively for the Arabs of Algeria, the coolies of India, and the niggers of Africa. Uhuru.
Bring up our next speaker about how we can, turn all this into practice. We are going to move into our appeal, our call for resources and organization. I'm going to bring up our national chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Nevel. Uhuru.
Uhuru, please keep the applause going for Chairman Omali Yeshitela. That absolutely brilliant presentation. Right. Unity through? Make the South Side? Uhuru. I just want to express my appreciation for both of those absolutely profound, amazing presentations from our keynote speakers. Please give another round of applause for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess. That was just, wow. I was honestly speechless. I think everybody agrees with me. That was just, both of those presentations were really, really incredible. And just a great honor to be a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And as the chairman said, to be one of those white people for Black Power. So let's try that chant. Let's just say, Black Power! Black Power! There we go. I like that. That's good. All right. So I want to just, salute our speakers, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess, and I also want to join in saluting Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, whose presence is felt in this building that we're in and in so much of what I'm about to show you in this presentation about the work, the concrete work of the African People's Socialist Party to construct in the real world the vision that the chairman has put forward in that amazing presentation. And I also wanted to just salute Chimaranga Selambao of the African People's Socialist Party, who's also functioning as the brilliant campaign manager for Eritha Akilé Cainion for District 7 City Council. We could give a round of applause for Chimaranga. And it's a great honor to work under the leadership of Chimaranga as the field director on that campaign. And of course, I want to salute the person who's going to be speaking right after me, so I'm going to try to be really quick, which is Akilé herself, Director Akilé Nai, known for the sake of the ballot as Eritha Akilé Cainion. Let's give a round of applause for Akilé. And I want to thank Jackson, and then I also want to give a shout out to the organizer, the main organizer for this event, Amanda Carlozzi. Uhuru to Amanda. And Amanda is the vice chair nationally of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and leads the work here in St. Petersburg to build USM. And just appreciate everybody who worked so hard to build this event. And all of you for being here. All right, so this presentation is called Reparations in Action. And first thing I wanted to do is ask, raise your hand if you are registered to vote here in St. Petersburg. Okay. Raise your hand if you have already voted by mail. Okay. You can do that. You can still sign up on votepinellas.com. And now raise your hand if you plan to vote for Akilé for District 7 City Council. Okay, good. Everybody raise their hand. Good. So I want to start off by saying that there is a reparations victory on the horizon for the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, on November 5th. And what we want to talk about in this presentation tonight is how this campaign is bigger than a vote. It's bigger than an election. This is, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has said from day one, this is about building a movement, a social movement, a people's movement for reparations to the Black community. That when successful, will actually make it irrelevant who is in city council because the power is in the hands of the people. So that movement is what is required to get Akilé into city council and to make it possible for everything on Akilé's platform to become a reality once she is elected. And I just wanted to say, and this is inaccurate because I'm very bad at math, but one of the things that, Akilé is very young. She's 22 years old. And let's give that a round of applause. There she is. Okay. So sometimes people are like, oh, well, you're so young, you have the experience. And if you go to these debates, which are exciting solely because of Akilé's presentations, if you've been to these debates, you've sat through 10 minutes or so of other candidates droning on about their credentials and different ways that they've obediently served the ruling class for many decades and blah, blah, blah. And they have so much experience. And if you're looking for experience in being corrupt and being a sellout and working in the interests of the status quo, then take your pick, in any of the other districts and in District 7. But if you're looking for someone who has experience fighting for the people, fighting for reparations, fighting in the interest of the Black community, Akilé has more experience as a 22-year-old than all of the other candidates combined in any of the other races in her own lifetime. But beyond that, a 22-year-old Akilé actually has over, I think the number is 47, right? Because the 1972 was the founding of the party. Over 47 years of experience fighting for reparations, because Akilé is a member of the African People's Socialist Party that was founded in 1972 by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. So this is bigger than the ballot box. This is a worldwide movement led by the African working class. And the call to white people is not, as has been stated so eloquently by our speakers, is not to give charity, which is really the most offensive thing. We steal everything from African people, and then, a Bono or an Angelina Jolie gets to strut around, doling out some of the stolen wealth. And really the only suffering that might alleviate is our own guilt, maybe, but does nothing to change the conditions of African people in the world. And that it's not a matter of well-wishing, it's a matter of material solidarity with the struggle of the black working class and African people everywhere for political and economic power, also known as black power. Black power. So this is what reparations look like. I'm going to show you briefly just a little thumbnail sketch of what the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, is doing all around the world to make this vision concrete, and has been doing for almost 50 years. So the first thing I want to show you is a short video about one of the most exciting developments in the work and strategy of the Uhuru movement to simultaneously fight to overturn this social system while building the new world. As the chairman says, the new world is already under construction in the form of projects like the Black Power Blueprint. So this is being spearheaded by Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, and this is a video that's going to give you just a glimpse of the work that's happening primarily in St. Louis, Missouri, where the Black Power Blueprint is headquartered at this time.
Be a part of the progress that's going on here at 4101 West Florissant. This is your Uhuru house. This is your place. If it's a black community, it's your community. So come on out and take part in the work that's going on down here.
Because of you, we are really doing this.
You have funded the ability of hundreds of African workers and volunteers to transform a once abandoned building into this beautiful community center.
We can see the beginning of an entire community coming together for self-determination and power over our own lives.
The Black Power Blueprint is the only thing that addresses the serious disparities in our community by bringing political and economic power into the hands of the African working class.
North of the infamous Delmar Divide is the other St. Louis, where 70% of those living in poverty are African, and hunger is a daily reality.
Hundreds of you from the white community have united with this opportunity to contribute as a powerful stance of reparation to the black community. Because of you, the Black Power Blueprint is rapidly moving forward, bringing a future of self-determination to the African community of St. Louis. With more than 800 contributions from you, we exceeded our Phase 2 goal of $50,000. Thanks to you, we were able to demolish the condemned buildings across the street from the Uhuru House to make way for the One Africa, One Nation Marketplace and the community garden. Thanks to you, we have installed a 50-foot flagpole that will fly the 25-feet red, black, and green flag as an inspiring symbol of a future of justice, prosperity, and liberation for African people here and around the world. We need your contributions to install the outdoor lighting and to pave and fence the lots, to complete the beautiful outdoor venue space and the community garden.
A 50-foot flagpole was erected on this land, flying a 25-foot red, black, and green African flag. Renovations on the 3rd floor of the Uhuru House are wrapping up for additional office and program space, with insulation, drywall, and mudding and taping.
With help from our amazing volunteers, we are renovating a 4-plex apartment complex earmarked for housing for our African Independence Workforce Program, creating jobs for those re-entering our community from the prison system.
We will upgrade all bathrooms and kitchens, install stoves, refrigerators, cabinets, and fixtures, and the apartments will be furnished.
One of our biggest focuses now is raising resources for a community basketball court on the corner of West Florissant and College Avenue, where we've just demolished condemned buildings. This project is in response to the demands of our community for recreational facilities of our own.
Other projects for Phase 3 include architectural plans, new roofing, and new windows for the beautiful Jico Kitchen, located in an Art Deco building on Goodfellow Boulevard that had once been a boat dealership. As our most ambitious project so far, Jico will include a cafe, bakery, community kitchen, and the headquarters of Uhuru Foods and Pies, one of the 26 economic institutions of the Black Star Industries and African People's Education and Defense Fund around the U.S.
This is not just to set up some kind of institution. This is a project in the hands of the African working class. And the class has to have power for us to be free.
This life-changing project is coordinated by Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela.
It is really inspiring to see how much the people love this project and looking forward to the marketplace and all the other projects. This is a positive response to gentrification because it's about more than just keeping our community. It's about building economic self-reliance for our community. The Black Power Blueprint is economic power in the hands of the African working class. Donate to this unique project, which is changing the world day by day.
Isn't that amazing? Yes, you can say yes. Well, I just want you to know, if you're new, if this is the first time you've been here, first time you're seeing all this, and you're sitting there like, wow, this is so amazing, I can't believe this is happening, that feeling never goes away. So stick around, it gets better and better. This is real, this is the revolution, and now you are a part of it. So one thing I want to say, and I'm going to try to go really quick because we have another amazing speaker coming up. So this is the most recent and one of the most powerful fronts that the Uhuru movement has opened up. But in many ways, this is a continuum that has been in place since the founding of the African People's Socialist Party. And you might say that the Black Power Blueprint began in 1972, that the African People's Socialist Party has been building organizations and economic programs to forward the liberation and self-determination of African people everywhere since its founding. And I'm going to show you now just really quick, so sorry if this goes too fast, but just some of the programs and departments and ways that the Uhuru movement is changing the world as we speak. So the party has put in place organization to fight for the liberation of African women. This is a picture of members of the African National Women's Organization in Cameroon, and has put in place organization to fight for sustainable development and self-reliance of African communities in the form of an organization called APDEP, the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, that, among many other things, is building community gardens and other sustainable development projects throughout the African world. Has built organization to fight to defend the democratic rights of African people and wage struggles against police violence and other colonial terror in the form of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, whose courageous president, Columbi Andanette, is pictured there. has built organization to fight for independent African working class media, and there's a lot that could be said about this. One example is the Burning Spear newspaper that's been talked about tonight, as well as now 2 radio stations, Black Power 96.3, which is an incredible radio station here in St. Pete, as I'm sure you all know, and the new One Africa 100.1 FM. So let's give that a round of applause. The Uhuru movement is fighting to reclaim African culture for African people in the form of many institutions and programs, including the Freedom Mass Choir and Band and the Black Power Poetry and Open Mic Nights. The Uhuru movement is fighting to build the independent African economy. This is a program that's been launched by the Office of Deputy Chair to promote Buy Black Power, to promote African commerce, and especially within the programs and institutions of the Uhuru movement itself. Is fighting for African community economic development. The Uhuru movement has 2 furniture stores currently, and one is in Oakland and the other is in Philadelphia, that have been there for decades. They're amazing furniture stores, and they're more than just furniture stores. They are institutions of African working class economic development, and also each furniture store is like an Uhuru house. You go in there, you see the Burning Spear, you see pictures of revolutionaries on the walls, they have events there, and also sponsor an incredible marketplace and many other things that I'm going to talk about in just a second. The Uhuru movement is fighting for African community control of food production and distribution. Shout out to Uhuru Foods and Pies, who actually has a table here tonight. Fighting to build African community commerce with the One Africa, One Nation marketplace that literally enables hundreds of African vendors to participate in generating resources within the African community to benefit African people themselves. Is fighting to build African independent economic capacity, even building the Uhuru Wabanki banking system within the Uhuru movement under the leadership of the Office of Deputy Chair. Is fighting to build African community centers and hubs of political and cultural life, such as the Uhuru Houses, and I'm only showing you one of them, this is in Oakland, and it's amazing. It's a very beautiful Uhuru House in Oakland. And I didn't put the St. Louis picture in because you saw it in the video, and I didn't put the St. Pete one in because you saw it when you parked in the parking lot today. And here we are. And then finally, last but not least, the Uhuru movement is worldwide. The African People's Socialist Party is building worldwide in the form of the African Socialist International in occupied Azania or South Africa, and in many other places throughout the continent, in the Bahamas, in Europe, under the leadership of the African Socialist International, which is led by Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa, who I want to give a huge salute to Luwezi Kinshasa, that is completing what the Garvey movement started. And this is just a percentage of what the Uhuru movement is doing. I would be here for another hour if I attempted to tell you another maybe 5% of what the Uhuru movement is doing. So now I want to quickly talk about 4 simple ways you can do something real today, tonight, right now, for reparations to African people. So number 1 is you can donate and or join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement, as we've talked about throughout this event, is the organization primarily to build white solidarity with Black power. Of course, everybody is encouraged to contribute, to join, and to be a part of this under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So we have a goal tonight. I think it's a rather modest goal. It's $1,500. Do we agree that that is easily achievable? Good. And this money goes straight to all the programs that you just saw, specifically the Black Power Blueprint, which is the main project that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement has been called upon to raise reparations for at this time. So you're getting a pledge card right now, and in that pledge card, it'll show you the different ways that you can do this. So to become a member, or to contribute or to donate, you can do one of the following things or all of the following things. You can become a sustainer. A sustainer is somebody who contributes every month. You can set it up online. We can set it up before you leave tonight. You don't even have to think about it. Every single month, it's just built into your budget that you are contributing reparations to these amazing projects that we just talked about tonight. I am a sustainer, and many other members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement are sustainers. So you're already a sustainer. You're already a member. So what can you do? You can upgrade. You can upgrade your sustainer level to a higher level, or you can just make a one-time donation. Or you can literally do all of those things if you want to. So The other thing is, so how do you do it on a practical level? Well, any way you want, any form of money is taken. The checks can be made out to Uhuru, UHURU. If you want to pay by card, we can do that tonight. I believe Amanda has the ability to process card payments and also get you signed up online, and you can also pay in cash. Whatever you decide to do, please fill out the whole pledge card, because we want to have a record and we want to thank you. We want to send you a thank you to appreciate your generous contribution to the work of the Uhuru movement tonight. So I want to talk about the 3 most popular sustainer levels. If you look in the pledge card, you'll see a whole long list of different levels at which you can join. The 3 most popular are the following. Before I do that, is there anybody that would like to contribute $1,500 tonight? We can just wrap it up right now. Okay. You can do it anonymously. So the 3 most popular levels in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement are as such. One is the Ella Baker level. This is named after the incredible African freedom fighter Ella Baker, and it is $100 per month or $1,200 per year. And for some, that's not that big of a deal. For others, it might sound like a big deal until you actually sit down and look at what you spend $100 a month on and start reworking it, and all of a sudden, it's actually quite feasible for most of us to do that in the white community. So this is $100 a month that goes to these programs, that goes to this strategy, or $1,200, which you can do one time tonight, or, like I said, on a monthly basis. So would anybody in the room tonight like to become an Ella Baker level sustainer of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement? Let me put my glasses on for this. Okay. All right. So the next most popular level is the Malcolm X level membership. This is literally $1 a day, $1 a day. Think about what you spend $1 a day on, and imagine that being redirected to the struggle to change the world, the struggle for reparations to African people. So $30 a month or $365 a year. Like I said, you can do it monthly, or you can do it as a one-time donation. Would anybody in the room tonight like to become a Malcolm X level sustainer of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement? Okay. Upgrade, all right. And I know who you are, but if you could tell us your name.
My name is Vanessa.
That's Vanessa. Shout out to Vanessa Areco, great member of USM here in St. Pete, and taking great photos of our event tonight. So that's great. Thank you so much. Would anybody like to match Vanessa and become, oh, I see a hand over there. And could you tell us your name, sir? Johan Bedingfield, Uhuru. Great. All right. Anybody else? Thought I saw a hand out there somewhere. Okay. So next is the most popular level, which is named after the one and only Che Guevara, and that is $10 a month or $120 a year. Is there anybody that would like to be like Che and stand in solidarity with the struggle of African people for national liberation in the form of becoming a Che level member for $10 a month or $120 a year? All right, so at this point, I want to just throw it open. If there's any amount that you want to donate, just you can go ahead and announce it. Yes, Jackson. $50. Okay, Jackson. Let's give a round of applause for Jackson, our great MC today. 250, and that's Dorothy Eaton back there. Shout out to Dorothy. That is great. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Anybody want to be like Dorothy? Yes. 100 from Chairwoman Penny Hess. Uhuru. Okay, I see a few hands over here. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry. $10, and your name? Tama Gadini. She didn't say her last name, but I know her. Everybody knows Tama. Shout out to Tama. Tama's a great volunteer in the campaign as well. Makes sandwiches for our volunteers every single Saturday, so shout out to Tama. And we have Johan again over here. $100 from Johan Bedingfield. Peru. Anybody else? Yes. 200 from Janice Camp. All right, I know somebody is calculating. Yes. The national treasurer of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is calculating. 842, okay, very good, very good. We're over halfway there, there you go. So let's get the second half towards that $1,500 goal tonight. So anybody else want to contribute at any amount towards the work of the Uhuru movement? Oh, I see somebody holding up a card back. Okay, and your name? Rashad, all right. That's Ella Baker Sustainer, $100 a month. All right. And I saw somebody else. I'm so sorry. Yes. Could you? $15. All right. Uhuru. And could you tell everybody your name? Deborah. This is Deborah. I know Deborah as well. Sorry. I'm revealing that I know everybody. But Deborah comes from Tarpon Springs to volunteer in the Akilé campaign. She's amazing. Really want to give a shout out to Deborah. Okay. Where does that bring us? 957. And it's actually more than that towards the year overall. Maybe we could get that number. Let's get that number as well, if possible. Okay. So while you're all trying to figure out how much you can contribute, and please feel free at any point to interrupt me if you want to announce your donation. That is completely fine. I will not be offended. But what I want to do now, and also you can donate anonymously. If you're not comfortable announcing it, go ahead, fill out your pledge card, and we're going to come back up and announce the total before the event is done. Yes, you can pay with a card. You can pay with a check. Is that what you were asking, Penny? Yes, you can pay with your card. You can pay by check. You can. Yes. And by the way, I just want to let people know, as you may have seen on the card, you do not have to be a sustainer to be a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So if you're considering joining, you can join if you're a student for $10 a year, or as a general member for $25 a year. So is there anybody in the room tonight who's not already a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement who would like to join before you leave tonight? Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is another way that you can be involved in reparations in action. Okay, you can volunteer with Uhuru Foods and Pies. And this is an incredibly, that you see the volunteers from Uhuru Foods and Pies waving their hands in the back. So this is an incredibly important program of the Uhuru movement that is really, it's bigger than pies. Like it said in the PowerPoint, it's about building the ability for African people to control the means of food production and distribution. And it's also about pies. It's also about delicious sweet potato, pumpkin, apple crumb, chocolate pecan, and many other kinds of pies that you can participate in baking, selling, distributing, eating. And it's an amazing campaign that happens all throughout the year, but it really accelerates during the holiday season. So really want to encourage people to go to the table at the back and purchase Uhuru Pies, and also sign up to volunteer in this incredible campaign that the Uhuru movement wages here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and in many other places throughout the country. The next thing I want to talk to you about is Reparations Tuesday, which is a name that we are giving to a campaign that is otherwise known as Giving Tuesday. So Giving Tuesday is it's kind of like a non-profit holiday that happens all throughout the world where people donate to organizations, usually to charity organizations that they find worthy of their support. So on this day, we are reclaiming it as Reparations Tuesday, and we're going to be waging a huge campaign, a global day of reparations to African people that will involve using Facebook to post Facebook fundraisers, doing outreach tables, knocking on doors, doing the Reparations Challenge, where any skill that you have, if you want to do a benefit show, if you want to do anything to raise resources for the work of the Uhuru movement, that is part of Giving Tuesday. And finally, and I will close it out because I want to go ahead and make sure to turn it over to our next speaker, the final thing that you can do is, if you are already involved, if you have not yet gotten involved, is to become involved on a deeper level, double, triple, quadruple our commitment to go all out in these next 3 weeks to win this election for Eritha Akilé Cainion for District 7 City Council. Please, let's do everything we can. The future of the black community and the future of the whole city is at stake on November 5th, and we can win. Like the Tampa Bay Times had to admit, Akilé is running against the system. Akilé represents the people against the system, and the people can win, Akilé can win, Akilé will win, but we have to make it so. So get involved, come to the campaign table, and join this campaign. Come out with us on Saturdays and participate in this powerful movement to make the South Side black again and bring unity through reparations to St. Petersburg, Florida. Uhuru. Thank you.
Reparations? Uhuru. And another, oh, go ahead.
I am very self-critical that I failed to also encourage people who are watching online. We are live streaming. You can contribute online by going to uhurusolidarity.org and clicking the big red button that says Pay Reparations. You can go ahead and pay reparations tonight, and we will announce that as part of our goal. So thank you to everybody who is watching online and participating in this amazing event. Turn it over to Jack.
Appreciate everyone who has paid reparations or donated tonight. Thank you all so much for contributing and participating in this event for reparations to African people. So, salute Chair Jesse and all of you. And I next want to bring up, it is my absolute honor to introduce our final speaker tonight. And, for her, we're going to rehearse this chant of Make the South Side Black Again. Make the South Side black again. Make the South Side black again. She is 22 years old, candidate for City Council in St. Pete, running on a platform of reparations and economic development for the black community. Her slogan is, Make the South Side black again. That's right. She is the youngest member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party as the Director of Agitation and Propaganda, which includes the role of Editor-in-Chief of the Burning Spear newspaper. And please join me in welcoming Eritha Akilé Cainion. Uhuru!
Unity through. Make the South Side. Uhuru. Well, first and foremost, I just want to give a hand. Obviously, I came a couple presentations afterward, but I really want to give a hand to my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru. And I really appreciate this presentation Chairman's presentation, because it helps to contextualize what it is that's happening in the city of St. Petersburg. That, it's been already described that this is beyond an election here in St. Pete for us to be participating in. It is one of the most important elections we will ever find ourselves participating in. And I mean that in lieu of the presidential elections, all of them. And I'm saying it is the most important because of what is at stake here and what is on the ballot and what it means for the rest of this country and the rest of the world. Because the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement launched the first reparations candidate into the electoral arena 2 years ago. And that is a part of a continuum of this reparations struggle. And that's why it was so important for this presentation to be made about the history of the party and the struggle for reparations, because that's what this is a part of. It's not a random, thing that I just came up with yesterday. I said, this is good, and I just want to jump in. This is a part of a continuation of the reparations struggle and the reparations demand that the party has taken it where people were not willing to go, including in the electoral arena. Because 2 years ago, we were told that if you ran on a platform of reparations, it was lunatic fringe politic. You could not win. They told us that 2 years ago. And now, all of a sudden, presidential candidates are vying for a seat talking about reparations, because that has become the new litmus test for the genuine progressive agenda. That's the reality. And now in this election here in St. Petersburg, Florida, we won the primary election. We made it past that primary election. We defeated everything it is that the status quo threw at us and made it past the primary. Now we're head to head with the big money back status quo politician in the form of the incumbent of District 7. And that, she as an individual represents the status quo, but the whole election represents this fight of the people against this system, the system that we have talked about all throughout this discussion, all throughout tonight, the system that you hate. This campaign is fighting for. This platform is fighting against. And it's fighting to not only define the problem as it really is, because I think it's really important that we're able to take back this word progressive. Because the crooks use the word progressive to say that the development that's happening downtown at the expense of the Southside black community, that's progress. We have to take that back. That the real progressives are in this room and the real progressives lay within this reparations platform. We have to take it back, redefine it. Because what we're looking at right now is not progress. In fact, the black community is worse off today than we were even 50 years ago in this city. Where at one point in time, we had 100 black businesses in one location alone in the gas plant district, gone. Where we had businesses lining 22nd Street South, and they built an interstate through it so white people could have access to downtown and the beach, gone today. But we're supposed to believe that it's more progressive, that this is what progress looks like because there's another high-rise, another luxury apartment, because the Rays are playing baseball in a damn near empty stadium. We're supposed to believe that that's progress. So we're redefining this whole thing for everyone, that the real progressive is the one who will boldly stand. And it's bold. It is bold. Even today, 2 years later, and even though everybody's still talking about it, it's still the bold thing to do. Even though we would say rectifying the historic wrongs committed against the black community is the just thing to do, is the thing that will accomplish social and economic justice, even though genuine affordable housing and economic development for the black community doesn't seem like radical ideas, it is when the status quo's bread and butter is from the luxury apartment developers downtown. So this is an extremely important election. And it's a rare opportunity. Because even with all the so-called progressives around the world, or in this country running for office in local elections and national elections or whatever, that it's still a rare opportunity that there is a platform out there that represents the genuine interests of the black working class. It is something that rarely ever gets done, and the only real times I've seen it is when the Uhuru movement has done it. This is not the first time the Uhuru movement has ran for office. We've ran for office. Chairman Omali Yeshitela ran for mayor in 2001 and won every black and mixed precinct here in this city. He was the people's mayor. He was elected the people's mayor. So it's not the first time the Uhuru movement has run an election. But it's always rare to see an agenda that speaks explicitly to the interests of the black working class. Because we're not supposed to say anything. We're not supposed to be a part of it unless we are talking about the ways that we are willing to carry out the status quo at our people's expense, unless we are willing to talk about what we are willing to sell out. That is the only time we're supposed to be able to participate in this process. Or they'll criticize you and say you're divisive if you're fighting for your community. They say make the South Side black again is divisive because you want the restoration of your community. You want to end gentrification. They call you divisive. So we're never supposed to be represented in this process. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela talked today about counterinsurgency. And that at one point in time, because they talk about, well, changes don't happen, black people don't get out to vote, and less and less people are voting. And that's because more and more people are getting hip to the game and realizing that there's nothing to vote for. And the black community at a certain point in time was fighting the struggle to be able to have the right to vote when our leaders were when black power was being talked about. It was the main trend. And then at the point the black people gained the right to vote, they had killed off that movement. And so it's a rare opportunity that we have to see a platform talking about bringing power and self-determination into the hands of the black community, and it's totally unapologetic about it. And it will go in any room, and it will debate, and even though they don't call it a debate, we'll go into any forum, and we'll call the question. And we'll say it, and we'll shatter their decorum, and we refuse to play by their rules that they've established to make sure that the people cannot be a part of this process. We will break it all down, and we have, and we are continuing to do that. Because this message is for everyone that wants to see a future here in this city. And something different than the craziness that you see when you turn on the TV. And the despair that you see about what the future is going to be, because this is all the stuff that's going on. This is a positive vision. It is the blueprint for what can happen through the electoral arena. It is the blueprint for what can happen, and should become the standard for what politicians have to say when they're running for office. They have to be able to say that they're in support of reparations. They cannot say they are progressive, they are for progress, they are for justice or anything like that if they are not willing to support reparations. That they are lying. Because if you are for justice, then you have to be against the oppression of the black community. St. Pete is no different from any other place in this country. whose economy, whose foundation rests on this history of exploitation that we're talking about. St. Pete benefits from a tourist economy that could not exist if black people in this city did not clear the swamps and work in the nursery homes of old white people and cleaning the bedpans and experiencing the worst kind of degrading humiliation that a black person could face in this city. If it wasn't us, working in their restaurants, cleaning their hotels, they would not have an economy if it was not for the exploitation and stolen labor of our community. Would not exist. So when we talk about this question of reparations, and white people will say, because they always ask, well, what does that mean for me? And then they go, well, I never owned a slave. I've never participated in that. But what happened 100 years ago is happening today to black people. Just sometimes it looks different. So they might not lynch you today and then name a park after a man that was involved in a lynching, Straw Park. They may not do that like they did John Evans in 1914 in this city, but they'll drown 3 teenage girls in a pond and then say it's because these kids are out here stealing cars and the black community has a problem. That's what they'll do. And they'll totally, as Chairman said, they'll pump out this narrative about, how this is deserved. The black community should be pushed out, gentrified, and all this kind of stuff because it is impeding upon what it is that they're trying to do. And they will convince you that you are part of the problem and this should be happening, right? We're totally opposed to all of that. And that this platform and this campaign, this movement, because it's a movement, because we've always recognized that the government, tomorrow, Rick Kreisman, who dumped 1 billion gallons of sewage in the water and who gets backed by, big, billionaires, in New York and Miami, is not going to change his position on reparations. He's not going to do it. And when we're elected, because we're going to be elected, that when we're elected, those people in City Hall are not going to change their position. The candidates that are saying they're against reparations today, despite saying we want to heal the gaping wound, I've heard that many times, despite them saying that that's what they want to do, they're opposed to reparations, and they're not going to change their minds when we win. That the demand for reparations comes from the ground, and we've always recognized that. That what it is that we're talking about is bold, some of it unprecedented, and it's going to require us to fight tooth and nail to make this stuff happen. It's going to require us to fight tooth and nail to win this election. And that's what I want you all to be on board to do. I want you to want to win. I want you to want to see a different world. I want you to want to see what we see with the Black Power Blueprint and all this amazing work happen. I want you to see it, that this can happen in this city, that we do not have to accept what is happening today. We do not have to accept our rents rising. We do not have to accept that the city council will, unite and vote to up our water bills to pay for a crime that Rick Kreisman committed. We do not have to accept that. We do not have to accept that. We do not have to accept putting our children in these school systems when they're brutalizing our children and churning them out and putting them into prison. We do not have to accept that anymore. We can stand on our own 2 feet and we can fight this system and we can win. The Tampa Bay Times, despite the fact that they just released what I would consider a relatively good article about this campaign, because they made it very clear, 2 different opposing views in District 7. You have the status quo incumbent who says she likes the directions the city is going. And for most black people, you knock on their door and you say the direction the city is going means you're supposed to be out of here in a couple of years. And then you have this candidate talking about reparations and saying that this is against the system. This is a campaign against the system, and it's totally distinct. But the Tampa Bay Times will also write why it endorses the status quo incumbent, and then say that the only reason you support this campaign, the only reason you're out in grueling heat, to drop newspapers and knock on doors is because I've bewitched you with my personality. I've made you like me, and that's why you all do what you do and work so hard to do, because you just like who I am. I mean, of course, that's ridiculous. I hope you guys like me. But, what has won people and has made people commit to this is the fact that it represents a campaign opposed to the system. That it's not just your good old boy politician coming around trying to, rub elbows and get votes. This is not what this is about. You do not work as hard as you do for this campaign because you like somebody. It's because you are committed to the politic. You are committed to this future that we're talking about. So I want you to double down your efforts. We have 3 more weeks. And the voting has already begun. People are already sending in their mail-in ballots. So people are already voting. And for whoever has not heard about this campaign yet, we have to give it to them. Because people cannot have an excuse this election. We cannot give people an excuse to say they did not know us, they did not know they didn't have another option. The people have another option. We have another option. So we have a responsibility to take it. There is no room to hide. The line has been drawn, and you have to say what side of it you stand on. You're either for or against gentrification. You are either for or against oppression. You are either for or against this system. That's what we're looking at. And if you find yourself aligned with the struggle that the black working class has been waging in this city, then you need to join this campaign. You need to do whatever it is that you got to do. Commit yourself, recommit yourself for these next 3 weeks so that we can take it home. And realize that it's so much bigger than when we go to our homes in this city, that what happens on November 5th will impact everything. We were not supposed to be here. We were not supposed to be talking about this. And we are here. And we are fighting it despite everything it is that they're throwing at us. And they throw it at us and they attack us because we are winning. We are winning, and that's why they throw all the blows. They have to do that because if they weren't intimidated, if they didn't think that we could win, they wouldn't do all of that. They would just be comfortable with the fact that she has thousands of dollars and a bunch of endorsements, and she has the incumbency and can just walk on in. But they can't rely on that because the people's might is so much stronger. I know I've seen it in action. I see it in this room. So for all of you, who are live in St. Petersburg or who don't, you got Tarpon Springs. Right in this room. For all of you, be a part of this campaign. Commit or recommit yourself for the next 3 weeks. And then join this movement. Because it goes beyond an election. That you have to be a part of this movement to make this thing happen. Because election day comes and we're going to need you no matter what to continue to fight all the way. Because like I said, they're not going to change their minds. They always ask me, well, how are you going to work with other council members when they don't really agree with reparations? I'm going to work with the people, and they're going to make these people up here have to vote in the interest of the people. That's between them and you, So that's what this is about. And I just want to say that it is an absolute honor to be able to represent the African People's Socialist Party through this capacity. It's an absolute honor to be a part of the reparations struggle and to take this all the way to victory. And, I'm recommitting myself, for the next 3 weeks because I believe in this totally. I know that we are winning. I see the evidence of it every single day. And I just am totally confident in the ability of the people to take this. So thank you all so much. Thank you to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. This has been such an incredible event. Again, want to salute my leadership. And to all of you, join this campaign. If you have not already, get signed up. Join this movement. This is your home now, all right? So make the South Side unity through. The time is Uhuru.
For Akilé, take some literature from the table. There's the issue of the South Side Speaks. Goes into all the details about this campaign, and hand it to your friend. Take a few with you, take literature, and volunteer with this campaign tonight. Also, if you have not already, if you have a pledge card that you have not yet turned in, or need to do something by card, visit Amanda at the Uhuru Solidarity Movement table. And Uhuru, so now it is your time. This is the Q&A section, the question and answer period. If you have comments, if you have questions, if you want something answered or addressed, come to the mic up here and ask your questions of our speakers tonight. And Chairman Penny Hess is moderating, correct? Or yes, Uhuru.
I want to salute Akilé and Eritha, Akilé, Cainion, Uhuru. That was powerful. That was a powerful presentation, and we just have a couple of minutes, but if anybody has a question, a comment, really quickly, at the end that you would like to make, please come up. Hey.
Thank you. If anyone else has, any questions or comments, ask us after the event. We're closing up. Sorry. We'll be here a little after to talk to. So next, I want to bring up our local chair, Amanda Carlozzi, for a very special announcement.
Haru, I will be very quick. I just want to just start by appreciating everyone that was involved in building this event. I'm worried about listing off names for forgetting someone, but Jackson, Johan, Tama, Santosh, Kyle, Zoe, Vanessa. I really appreciate what the branch of USM did to build this. I also appreciate Janice, Kat, and Olivia from Uhuru Foods and Pies, who did a lot of work to put this event out on their tables, as well as social media and for being here with their delicious pies. And I really appreciate everyone from the campaign that after being on outreach all day still came here at night to hear from our amazing speakers. And just want to salute my direct leadership, Jesse Nevel, the chair of USM, the leadership of APSC, Penny Hess, and just do a very special salute and shout out to Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Deputy Chair Onizne Yeshitela, who, as was stated, had their birthday on the 9th of this week. So we just wanted to present you with some Uhuru pies. We got, which one is this? This is the vegan mixed berry, so that's for the chairman. And this one is the sweet potato that has the Africa crust on it, and that's for Deputy Chair. So, that's all. Just wanted to salute you. Happy birthday.
A very happy revolutionary birthday to Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And Deputy Chair Onizne Yeshitela, same birthday. So, so thank you everyone for coming. Few announcements. If you have your program here, you have a few of them with you. A reminder about Giving Tuesday and the open meeting coming up on Wednesday, October 16th. You can learn all about how to hold your own Giving Tuesday. That's Wednesday, October 16th, 7:30 p.m. Register at gt4blackpower.eventbrite.com. The info is in your program. Yes. Do we have the total, our local chair, Amanda? What is the total, Chair Jesse?
So, sorry to interrupt you, Jackson, but just want to salute and thank all of you. Together, we raised $2,704 towards the work of the Uhuru movement. Yes, reparations. Reparations.
What a huge victory. Salute all of you. And yes, so the Black is Back, as actually my next one. As Chairman was pointing out, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, of which the Uhuru movement is a leading force. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, as the chairman of Black is Back, is having a, thank you. Yep, we had that. Is having an annual mobilization march on the White House, Saturday, November 2nd and Sunday, November 3rd. So we want a big contingent of white people in solidarity with Black Power! Black Power! To be there. And this year, the march is themed Turn Imperialist Wars into Wars Against Imperialism. For more info, go to blackisbackcoalition.org or call 786-505-9859. It's also on the website. We want a big contingent. We're going to take a bus and go up to Washington, D.C. for this march on the White House. And another thing, the USM convention, National Convention, is coming up April 2020. So, start saving up for your plane tickets, or we're probably also going to take, some sort of transportation from St. Pete directly. So, St. Louis is going to be at the beautiful Uhuru House Community Center in St. Louis, Missouri, part of the Black Power Blueprint. Uhuru. And so tomorrow, we have this incredible event today, and then tomorrow you can come back to this exact spot for the Sunday rallies hosted by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, where you will also hear Eritha Akilé Cainion speak again. And these are Black community meetings that we are invited to in solidarity, and really encourage everyone to be here 3 to 5 p.m. So 3 p.m., be here tomorrow for the Impedum Sunday rally. And then our open meeting meeting for USM to learn more about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and get involved in building this movement of reparations. That's Monday, 6 p.m. at Community Cafe. That is 2444 Central Ave. And of course, if you do not yet have your copy of the beautiful new October issue of the Burning Spear newspaper featuring someone who looks very familiar, get one at the USM table up here or at the sign-in table over here with Johan, and you get your copy of the Burning Spear newspaper. If you have not yet paid your pledge to USM tonight, please visit Amanda. She's taking card, etc. And get your copy of Overturning the Culture of Violence and of Vanguard, the Advanced Attachment of the Afghan Revolution, 2 must-have books at the chairman's table over here. And I want to salute all of you, salute our incredible speakers, the chairman, Sherwin Penny, Director Akilé, Jesse Nevel, and salute all of you and this incredible team that made this event happen. So, unity through? Have a good night, everyone. Uhuru. Get some pie while it still lasts.